Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&A, so let me get my hat on, and let's get this going. Alright, first question. Hey Jason, do you have any advice on training when it's hot outside? I live in the Midwest where the temperature is like a roller coaster. This week it has been around 95 degrees, that's Fahrenheit, for my non-American subscribers. I train for about 30 minutes a day, 4 to 5 times a week on my lunch from work. I'm in the heat most of the day. I've noticed my strength going down. Is this related? Dehydrated or an electrolyte imbalance perhaps, or is that overthinking? Alright brother, I can relate to this. I live in Texas, and actually it's not uncommon in the summer here to get up to 10 degrees hotter than where it is where you are right now. I know that's crazy, but that's the reality of it. It gets very hot here. White people be melted like ice cream. But that aside, yeah, it's mostly, there's fatigue related to heat, and then there's the dehydration factor. Number one thing you need to do, stay hydrated. Extra fluids. Electrolyte drinks. And people say, oh, that's a bunch of sugar. You know what? If you're out in the heat working, in the heat sweating all day, that extra sugar in those electrolyte drinks is going to be fine. And find the ones that don't have as much fructose in it, won't matter. Glucose base sugars don't even affect you from the metabolic rate. The metabolic syndrome concerns and insulin sensitivity, they don't affect it at all. Most carbohydrates do not affect your insulin sensitivity in a negative way if you're physically active. It's only the fructose you're even worried about. And if you're out there in the heat like that, probably not going to matter that much. If you have a physically active job out in the heat, don't worry about things like that. Find a good electrolyte drink. Keep yourself loaded full of that. Keep yourself loaded full of those electrolyte drinks. Tons of that. Tons of extra water. Try to stay as cool as possible. I mean, obviously you can't depending on your job. But yeah, you're just going to have to deal with it. The heat fatigue itself is going to fatigue you. It is going to impact recovery. Again, you have to just stay within your limits, and it's not like you can't make progress. As long as progressive overload is there, even if you're training with the fatigue from your work, you're still going to gain muscle. You're still going to gain strength. It's not like you aren't going to make progress just because of all that fatigue. But what you can control is the hydration factor and the electrolytes, because that's a big part of it. Because you ask, hey, are the electrolytes involved? Yes, absolutely. Electrolytes are an enormous part of it, along with just general hydration. And don't be afraid of salt. You hear people worried about sodium and bloating and all of that. If somebody's out in the heat all day, trying to follow a low sodium diet could be a death sentence, and it's definitely going to impact your performance in a very negative way. Salt is essential, and anyone who's knows wilderness survival or done any of that understands that you get out in the wilderness in the heat, not enough salt in your diet, not enough salt available to you will kill you. Alright, next question. Hi Jason, what's your opinion on switching from rows to T-bar rows and an alternative some weeks? Are they equal in their effectiveness? You know, I've used T-bar rows in the past. I've done it on camera before. When I lived in the UK for general build-up. Nothing wrong with T-bar rows. I just don't feel like they necessarily offer any advantages over a barbell row. Truth be told, if I have to choose between the two, I've gone over to barbell rows and stuff like pendlay rows. If you do a barbell row with a fairly narrow grip, you're getting the benefits of the T-bar row. Okay, you're getting the benefits of the T-bar row. The main benefit the T-bar row gives you is the ability to grip it really, really narrow. Just like I talked about with chin-ups and all that stuff, that narrow grip is more protective of your shoulders, and it's a longer range of motion. It's going to give more potential hypertrophy overall. T-bar rows let you do that to some extent, but you could do the same thing with narrow grip barbell rows. I grip my pendlay rows the same spot you would a close grip bench press. I have my thumbs on the smooth. I feel like with a barbell row you can get all the same benefits, and there's nothing wrong with the T-bar row like I was talking about before with exercise variation. If you're not doing any sort of chin-ups or pull-ups as an alternative back exercise, if you wanted to do some T-bar rows just for a slightly different variation as far as muscle buildup for exercise variation like I was talking about, the T-bar row would be perfectly fine to work in every now and then. Perfectly acceptable to work in. And it's a relatively decent replacement for a normal barbell row. It's just a different exercise. I wouldn't necessarily say it's better or worse. I just think you can get everything you need out of a barbell row. But if you enjoy the variation of it, I don't see any problem with you using it. It's a good exercise. All right, next question. Jason, how do you recommend someone new to lifting figure out the calories they should be eating while running your novice program? I'm consistently running into a significant fatigue issue the day after I try to run your program. When I force feed myself, eventually my energy comes back, but I could never seem to pin down how much I should be eating. Any recommendations? I have a fairly hectic job and can't really afford my energy levels to be low because of this issue. But I'm going to recommend to always keep your carbs high. If you have a hectic job, you're fatigued from training, keep your carbohydrates as high as possible. By force feeding yourself, don't force feed yourself extra fat. Try to keep your carbs as high as you can get away with. How much should you be eating? Well, you're running my novice program. I assume you're trying to gain muscle. You should be eating enough that you're gaining weight. If you're gaining 2 pounds a month on my novice program of body weight, you're probably consuming about enough calories. So kind of keep an idea on it. If your weight starts to drop and you're not trying to cut, and I assume you didn't say the cutting version, you're not trying to cut body fat because you're overweight. And if you have a hectic job and you can't afford fatigue, cutting is probably going to be out for you. Any sort of serious cut, unless it's a very, very, very slow one, is not going to be an option for your life. I'm just going to throw that out there also. You should be slowly gaining weight. Now, if you're gaining 5 pounds a month, if you're gaining a full pound and a half every week, you're probably eating too many calories. All right, this is what I'm going to recommend. If you're gaining, a half a pound a week on the scale consistently, you've probably got your calories dialed in just about right. Because again, this is a muscle mass gaining program. You should be gaining muscle relatively quickly on it. So it should be a pound or two of muscle being added every month. You're going to gain some additional water weight and stuff too. You might even gain a small amount of fat, but if you're not gaining more than 2 pounds of body weight a month, you're probably not even gaining fat on the program. You're probably gaining pure muscle. So the scale should be gradually going up. That's what we're looking for. That's the amount you should be eating. All right, next question. Is it better to reduce calories or create a 400 calorie deficit from cardio? If someone burns 400 calories in a cardio session, is it really 400 calories because we have to consider BMR? So that 400 calories is really a burn of 220 to 228, estimating if someone's sitting down or moving around a burn of 1 to 3 calories per minute. I think you're way, way, way overthinking this. You're way overthinking this. So that 400 calories is 400 calories of additional burn. You shouldn't be factoring in your BMR at all. Do I think it's better? Yes, I think it's generally better for weight loss if you keep your calories higher and do more activity. Some people disagree. I don't. If you want to be athletic and fit, instead of just pursuing purely aesthetics, which is what a lot of people are doing, a lot of people who are recommending, you just move less and only weight lift, do no cardio, and recomposition just fine on lower calories and intermittent fasting. I know that's what Martin Berkman recommends. But if your goal is to be athletic and fit, I personally feel it's better to keep your calories higher and be more active. There's one thing I've noted. People have noted, I'm getting leaner. I've shown my weigh-ins. I'm down 18 pounds right now. I have not really noticeably cut my calories back. I'm just going to throw that out there. So as far as what I personally am doing, I don't want to eat less. I don't like to eat less. But I sure as hell can burn more calories. And I think that's what people need to do. I think you're going to end up better off in terms of your fitness, your health, your athleticism, everything else if you go the route to where you simply burn more calories. But yeah, don't start plugging in stuff like, well, how much of that is BMR? No, I mean, if something's trying to roughly estimate your caloric burn doing an activity, that is the additional calories that you should be burning. All right, it's not saying, your BMR is also this, so we're going to plug that into the estimate also and subtract. That's not what they're doing. Simply put, though, someone who has a higher BMR will burn more calories doing the same activity. In other words, if you have more muscle and bigger legs or more body weight, if you were to pedal a bike at a certain rate, that's why your body weight and stuff matters, you will burn more calories than someone who's 50 pounds lighter than you with less muscle mass. So that's a big, big consideration. The amount of leg mass you have will massively impact, and that affects your BMR too. That will massively affect how many calories you burn doing cardio of any type. So, it's totally different. Don't get them confused. All right, next question. Hey Jason, what's your opinion on the hanging leg race? It adds extra gripping volume works the core and moves the body through space. Is it an acceptable substitute if I don't want to do standing crunches every time? Yeah, I think it's totally acceptable substitute. Now, people will say, oh, well, it only works the lower abs. You can't work only your upper and lower abs. Okay, that's complete nonsense. Yes, you can emphasize certain parts, but you can't do that. You can't only work the lower. The abdominals is one muscle. It's not 6 or 8 muscles. It's actually just one muscle. And the reason you get a six-pack is because you have tendons that cut across that muscle that dig into it. Okay? You have tendons that cut across the muscle. But the muscle itself is actually one big muscle. All of your abs are one muscle, just like your right bicep is one muscle. It is actually one big muscle. Just a sheet of it. But as far as the hanging leg raises go, I think it's a great ab exercise. I prefer the standing stuff because of specificity of training as far as carry over to certain activities. But if you're just trying to develop your core, hey, it works on your grip more, you want to use that instead, hanging leg raise is a fantastic exercise. No problem with that at all. If that's what you want to use, go for it, brother. All right, next question. Do grains cause internal inflammation? My dentist says they do, but I wanted your opinion. All right, guys, here's the thing. Do they cause inflammation? Everything causes inflammation. Why are you concerned with it? Without inflammation, you would be dead within the hour. If your body stopped all its inflammation process right now, you would die. Okay, inflammation is not always a bad thing. It's excessive inflammation that's a bad thing. It's excessive inflammation that's a bad thing. It's not inflammation. Okay? That's like people saying, oh, this causes you to have blood pressure. Well, your heart beating causes you to have blood pressure. Having blood causes you to have blood pressure. It's high blood pressure, excessively high blood pressure that's a concern, but low blood pressure is a concern also. All right, it's the same with inflammation. And your diet affects it to some extent, but it's not really a big deal. And here's the thing. If it wasn't for authors and stuff writing books and trying to make grains seem evil, there is no anyone who looked at the sum of the various research and literature, whether it's direct studies, epidemiology, societies that eat extremely high grains oftentimes have low rates of diseases overall. Okay, they have lower heart attack rates, lower cardiovascular disease rates, lower diabetes rates, everything. So if we were to look at just the different factors there, no one would actually think grains are bad for you. It's because people are trying to find whatever it is, because of the paleo movement, because of the ketogenic movement, people are trying to just find reasons to make grains bad for you when they really aren't. All the available literature, if we were to look at it in its totality, and you hear countless experts say this all the time, people who have graduate degrees in the field, researchers, people with PhDs who are all athletic, all into training, all into coaching themselves, say this all the time. I don't care whether it's Mike Israetel, Eric Helms, Alan Aragon, people who all of you know. They all say repeatedly the overall evidence shows that eating a very high grain diet is perfectly healthy. And I'm not just saying whole grains. It's not even limited to just whole grains. You know what? Even white rice. White rice as a staple in a diet seems to be perfectly healthy. Okay, so this whole idea that, oh, it might be causing, well, so what? You need inflammation. The question is it causing significant enough inflammation that it's harmful? Well, if that's the case, then we would see all these inflammatory diseases and all these cultures that eat primarily grains as their staple food, and we don't see it. We don't see it. There are foods that cause far more inflammation than that, and the ironic part is that these are oftentimes food recommended on ketogenic type diets. There's the reality. There's your reality. There's your even higher inflammatory food. So what is it you're going to eat? You're not going to eat grains. What are you going to eat? Fruit, meat, vegetables. That's about all you really have left. And you could live on those just fine also, but grains are perfectly healthy. And people need to get rid of this crazy idea that grains are causing obesity, that grains are causing health problems. Societies that sustain themselves on 70 to 80% of their calories from grains don't have high rates of any of these things. They have decently low rates of all of them. All right, there doesn't seem to be any, not only causation, but no correlation even between grain intake and these problems. In fact, there's a negative correlation. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.